Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take the footnotes of history and the footnotes of sports and really try to elevate them into the main story.
Mm.
And today we're opening up a file that centers on a number. Just a number, but it's so astronomical it almost, defies belief in modern football.
It really does. That number is 423 goals
423.
for one single club. I mean, just think about the current landscape of the sport. The commercial pressures, the constant player movement, and then just let that statistic sink in for a second.
Right. 423 goals scored for a single team. In any era, that volume of scoring puts you squarely in the same conversation as the absolute global titans of the sport. The Pelés, the Messis, the Ronaldos.
The household names.
The names that are instantly recognizable in every corner of the world. And yet, if you step outside of Istanbul, maybe even outside of Turkey entirely, the name attached to that phenomenal figure is, well, it's often a mystery.
And that's the ultimate contradiction, isn't it? This is one of those incredible stories that sounds almost fabricated, like something out of a pulp novel or a video game.
Exactly.
Yet the fame remains so distinctly and fiercely local. And our mission today is to explore the sources and really understand the sheer weight of this individual's impact. I mean, we aren't just discussing the goals.
No.
We're discussing the cultural, the historical, and the geopolitical burden carried by the man, Lefter Güçkandanyanis.
The undisputed king of Fenerbahçe.
That's him.
And that's the central question we are grappling with today. Why is a man with such, as you said, video game level statistics and such profound historical importance not a global household name? I think to answer that, we need to look deeply at the man, the context of his entire life, and the incredibly difficult choices he made along the way.
We have to. Our sources define Lefter not just as this prodigious goal scorer, but as a really complex symbol of fierce loyalty, undeniable genius, and, crucially, a bridge between two complicated, sometimes hostile worlds. And his most respected nickname, I think, encapsulates his true status. Ordinaries.
Ordinarius, what does that mean exactly?
It translates to the professor of professors. That name alone, it moves the focus away from sheer athleticism and places it firmly on his strategic genius. It was about the tactical brain that saw the game on a level far, far above his contemporaries.
Okay, the professor of professors, I like that. Let's unpack this legend then. Let's start right at the beginning and set the stage for the complexity that really defined his life in Istanbul.
To understand Lefter, you absolutely have to start with the historical scene he was born into. Lefteris Antoniadis was born in 1924.
1924.
And the sources tell us this was on the island of Büyükada, which is this beautiful, kind of tranquil part of Istanbul. But 1924 is a profoundly critical moment in Turkish history. I mean, the War of Independence had only just ended.
Right, so the Turkish Republic was brand new.
Brand new. It was celebrating his first birthday. So you cannot separate his life story from this historical context.
So we're talking about Istanbul as this ancient melting pot, a place with immense history and overlapping cultures. But it was also a city experiencing just deep political and social strain as the nation was trying to rapidly modernize.
And secularize and really work to define its singular national identity.
Yeah.
That old cosmopolitan Ottoman structure was under significant pressure.
And that's the pressure cooker environment where his identity was formed.
Exactly. And it was central to his entire life. So he was born Lefteris Antoniadis to a Greek fisherman and his wife.
Okay.
Which means he was ethnically Greek with Greek Orthodox roots. Critically, however, he was officially a Turkish citizen.
So that duality is the tightrope he walked every single day of his life.
Every single day. He grew up speaking Greek at home, going to his Orthodox church, deeply embedded in the ancient Greek community of Istanbul, which had been there for literally thousands of years.
But then he learns Turkish out on the streets.
Out on the dusty streets, playing football with his friends, mixing with a diverse population of the city. He was truly a product of both worlds. He had that cultural fluency, but, that fluency also came with inherent dangers in a nationalizing state.
And I imagine that duality is what created his unique resilience, but also his cultural significance.
It did. But on the pitch, the talent was immediate and obvious. The sources speak of his almost supernatural ability to find space, to anticipate where the ball would be 2 seconds before anyone else even realized it.
Which leads us to the origins of his famous nicknames. These really help us understand how he was seen by the fans. And the sources repeatedly describe him as, well, not a big guy.
Not at all.
He stood at just 1.69 meters, which for our listeners is only about 5'7".
Tiny for a forward. even then.
By today's standards, absolutely tiny for a world-class forward. So naturally, this lack of stature earned him the common Turkish nickname Kusuk.
Which just means the small.
Simple enough. But the small man, as you said, possessed the biggest brain on the pitch.
Right. And that's where the genius nickname, Ordinarios, comes in. That's where the deep, deep respect lies. The professor of professors. It wasn't about his scoring total, not at first. It was about his method.
His approach.
His approach. We talked about chess earlier, and it's the best analogy. He didn't just play football. He saw the field as this complex geometric problem. He was calculating angles, momentum vectors, openings that a larger, faster player might just miss entirely.
So it was tactical intellect just completely dominating physical force.
That's it.
That is a phenomenal distinction. It suggests that while his opponents were just, running at a target, he was already calculating the optimal parabolic curve required to bypass the entire defense.
He was an artist, or maybe a scientist of the pitch.
Scientist, I like that.
Precisely. And this tactical brain made his eventual playing style so devastatingly confounding for defenders of that era. They were just used to physically dominant strikers.
Right, so they couldn't just muscle him off the ball.
No, they couldn't rely on brute strength to subdue him. They had to try to anticipate his brain, which was often impossible because his mind was just operating several levels above theirs. He was a puzzle wrapped in a technical masterclass.
Okay, so tracing his early career, his natural talent initially led him to Taksimspor, a prominent local club. He was clearly destined for stardom, but then there was a significant career-halting pause right as he was starting out.
A huge pause. 4 years of mandatory military service.
4 years.
A 4-year hiatus right between the ages of 19 and 23. I mean, that's arguably the most critical period in a young athlete's development, when they solidify physically and technically.
That could have derailed a lesser talent completely.
Oh, for sure. It speaks volumes about his innate ability, that he overcame such a substantial setback. And after completing his service, he joined Fenerbahçe in 1947.
And this was the moment his destiny truly solidified.
This was it. The start of what the sources rightly call his kingdom in the Yellow Navy of Istanbul. The groundwork of his complex identity and his tactical genius was laid. Now the construction of the goal-laden legend could begin.
Okay, so let's go straight back to that incredible, mind-boggling number that draws us in. 423 goals.
423 goals and over 600 matches for the club. Now, as analysts looking at the source material, we do need to apply a bit of scrutiny here.
Okay.
Because the sources are transparent that this figure includes friendlies, regional tournaments like the Istanbul League, and unofficial matches played over his extended career.
So it's not all top-flight league goals.
Correct. However, regardless of the official versus unofficial tally, the sheer volume and his undisputed status within Istanbul football, it elevates this into genuine folklore. This cements him statistically as the greatest, most prolific goal scorer in the club's history, bar none.
Okay, so let's probe that a little. While 423 is huge and it speaks to his continuous presence, what does the source material suggest his official competitive tally was? And how does that more restrictive number stack up against his global contemporaries?
That's a really important point for a deep dive audience. If we focus strictly on the National League structure, the Super League, which was formalized during his career, and the National Cup competitions, his official count is closer to the 200 mark.
Still a huge number.
A massive number. But crucially, that still makes him one of the top historical scorers in Turkish competitive history. And what we have to remember is the context of the era, the Istanbul League, which he dominated for years.
That was the main event before the nationwide league.
It was the main competition. So those goals, while we might call them regionally classified now, held the highest domestic importance at the time they were scored.
That's key. And he dominated across 2 primary stints, 1947 to 1951, and then after his brief foray abroad, 1953 to 1964.
So this wasn't a flash in the pan.
Not at all. This was over a decade and a half of sustained, visible excellence. He was the foundational heart and soul of Fenerbahçe, leading them to multiple Istanbul League titles, which, as you said, were the defining domestic competitions early on, and then 3 Super League championships once the National League structure was formalized in the late 50s.
Yeah, his impact wasn't merely statistical. It was completely transformative for the club. It defined what the fans still call the Lefter Golden Era. But let's move past the numbers for a second and discuss the artistry of the Ordinaries. Why was his playing style so uniquely effective?
This is where we get into the technical niche. He was not a typical 1950s center forward. They were often just large targets.
Right, stand up front and wait for the ball.
Exactly. But the sources describe him as a forward who played with the flair and tactical vision you'd expect from a modern attacking midfielder. He wasn't static. He'd come deep to collect the ball, he'd control the tempo, and he'd execute these surgical passes before gliding forward to finish the move he just started.
And that's the chess grandmaster applying his strategy. He wasn't just waiting for the final pass, he was the primary orchestrator. He was starting the complex maneuvers and then moving into position to complete them. I mean, it's a very advanced, almost total football approach for that generation.
And his famous left foot, his magic wand, was the tool of that genius. The descriptions we have are just fantastic. They talk about it being capable of these delicate chips that defied gravity.
And blistering long-range drives that shattered the net.
Exactly. And then these perfectly weighted defense-splitting passes. It was like precision engineering applied to a football.
We really need to dive into the technical aspect of his movement, particularly what the sources call his deceptive dribble. Because he was small, defenders often just underestimated his turning speed.
So he used his size to his advantage.
Totally. He had this small, low center of gravity that allowed him to pivot instantly. He would often bait a defender, draw them in close with a slight hesitation or feint, just making them commit.
And then he's gone.
And then, using that quick pivot and low center of gravity, he would just ghost past them. It wasn't about raw speed, it was about efficiency and timing, making the defender feel foolish.
He used geometry and timing as his physical advantage. And this combination meant he scored every type of goal imaginable. Whether it was a set-piece special, a long-range screamer, or a classic poacher's tap-in, he was complete.
He was. He had the vision of a number 10, the technical ability of a classic winger, and the clinical finishing of a true number 9, all in one 5'7" package.
And because this talent flourished in the age before instant replay and mass global television, his skill grew into mythology almost instantly.
Yes, his legend was incubated and magnified by the fans. Through word of mouth, through the breathless stories shared in the stands and in the tea houses after the matches, and this intimate connection, it leads directly to the iconic folklore surrounding him.
Right, the power of that local legend is distilled entirely into that one iconic, simple, four-word chant.
Ver Lefter, yes Defter.
Just means being.
Give it to Lefter and write it in the notebook.
That phrase, which you can still hear in the stadium today, it just speaks volumes about the level of certainty fans had in him.
It really does. It wasn't a statement of hope or encouragement. It was an axiom, a statement of fact. For the Fenerbahçe faithful, a pass to Lefter meant the action was already complete.
The ball was in the net.
The ball was in the net. The goal was assured. There was no need to wait for the net to ripple. The result was so settled that you might as well grab the official notebook and record the goal immediately.
That level of certainty is the ultimate vote of confidence from the faithful. It's a collective recognition that he operated on a plane of excellence few could touch. And one specific historical detail really marks his impact on the formalization of the Turkish game. The report suggests that Lefter scored the very first penalty kick in the new National League's history.
Yes, on March 15th, 1959.
That detail is more than just a footnote, isn't it?
Oh, it's a perfect capstone to his domestic career dominance. He wasn't just a great player. He was the one setting the historical precedents in the Turkish game. He was establishing benchmarks and scoring milestones right from the genesis of the formalized national competition. He was, quite literally, the inaugural king of that new era.
As commanding as he was locally, Lefter wasn't content to remain just an Istanbul legend. In 1951, he made a pivotal career decision that instantly cemented his status as a true trailblazer.
He did. He became one of the very first Turkish footballers to venture abroad.
And this is a massive point we have to emphasize for modern audiences. This was not the modern era of the Bosman ruling, easy international transfers, and constant global player movement.
Not at all. Moves like this were incredibly complex, they were rare, and they were financially risky for the buying club. It required immense courage from Lefter and a massive conviction in his own talent to leave the safety of his kingdom and venture into Italy and France.
And he didn't just go anywhere. He went to Italy, joining ACF Fiorentina in the demanding Serie A.
Which was arguably the strongest league in the world at the time.
For sure. And then he moved on to OGC Nice in France's Ligue 1 for a season.
Think about the culture shock and the technical adjustment required. I mean, Italian football in the 50s was highly tactical, and defensive catenaccio was emerging.
So very different from what he was used to.
Completely different from the more free-flowing style of the Istanbul League. Moving to that environment and still succeeding, it just speaks volumes about his adaptability and his technical depth.
And this experience abroad, it didn't just improve him as a player, it elevated his reputation back home exponentially.
Oh, absolutely. He had proven his talent belonged on Europe's biggest stages, which instantly promoted him from a local star to a true national hero in Turkey. He was flying the flag internationally.
And this leads us directly to his pivotal role for the Turkish national team. His performance for the national side only cemented his status as a national hero in the truest sense.
He earned 46 caps and scored 21 goals, a national record that stood for many, many years.
Until it was surpassed by players operating decades later in an era with a much higher volume of international matches.
Exactly. And he also had the immense honor of captaining the country multiple times.
Okay, so given his dual Greek-Turkish identity, did the sources indicate any pressure on him to choose one national team over the other? I mean, how did the Turkish Federation manage this high-profile figure who was ethnically a minority in a nationalizing state?
That's an astute question. The sources suggest that by the 1950s, the national team was eager to claim him entirely. He was born a Turkish citizen, and his commitment, especially after returning from Europe, was seen as an affirmation of Turkish identity and strength on the global stage.
So his talent kind of overshadowed the ethnic tensions.
For a time, yes. His participation was used in many ways as a symbol of the nation's ability to unite disparate peoples under one flag, even though that reality was, well, it was often very fractured.
And his defining moment on the world stage came during the 1954 FIFA World Cup in Switzerland.
The Turkish team qualified for only the second time in their history, and Lefter was the undisputed pivotal player. He scored 2 crucial goals,
Right.
including one against South Korea in the final group stage playoff.
And you have to think about the historical and political significance of this for Turkey at the time. This was a moment of immense national pride. His goals and the team's presence put Turkey's name squarely on the global football map.
It's one thing to dominate domestically. It's another entirely to deliver consistently on the world's biggest platform against international competition. He was making history that reached far beyond the borders of the Republic.
And his service didn't go unnoticed officially. As a testament to his long-term impact and loyalty to the national shirt, he was among the first footballers to receive the Golden Honor Medal from the Turkish Football Federation.
A high distinction awarded after he achieved 50 total caps for his country.
So the key takeaway from this section is that Lefter broke barriers both physically by playing in major European leagues and nationally by representing Turkey on the world stage and setting records. His talent was undeniable, and his willingness to pursue excellence abroad brought prestige back home.
But the acclaim he garnered would soon be tested by the immense turbulence surrounding his community.
Now we have to shift gears dramatically and move from the pure sports achievements to the deep political complexities of his era. We mentioned that Lefter walked a tightrope,
Right.
and the sources make it explicitly clear that being a star of Greek heritage in mid-20th century, Turkey meant his life was inherently complicated and, fraught with danger.
This is the crucial defining context that makes his loyalty to Fenerbahçe so incredibly profound. Lefter's life played out against a backdrop of increasing Turkish nationalism and systemic pressure that directly targeted non-Muslim minority communities.
And being a celebrated athlete didn't insulate him from these prejudices.
Not at all. We need to contextualize the systemic issues that preceded the crises. The sources detail governmental policies that effectively, forced emigration. The most stark example is the 1942 wealth tax.
The Varlık Vergisi.
Exactly. This was nominally a wartime measure, but its implementation was just brutally discriminatory.
We can't gloss over this. The tax was assessed at dramatically different and often arbitrary rates. Non-Muslims, so Greeks, Armenians, and Jews, were levied at rates far, far higher than Muslims.
The tax essentially confiscated wealth. And crucially, if you couldn't pay the exorbitant assessment within a very short time frame, the consequence was immediate forced labor.
And internal exile.
And often internal exile to work camps in eastern Turkey.
This forced labor and the economic ruin it caused led directly to an exodus. It was a calculated policy that unfairly impacted these minority communities, robbing them of their economic base and ultimately forcing many people,
including, as the sources note, some of his own relatives,
to leave Turkey entirely. So that pressure, the systemic existential threat, was always present in the background of Lefter's life, even while he was scoring goals on a Sunday.
And that background, that systemic prejudice, it just exploded into crisis in September 1955. This is where we see the jarring, painful contradiction of his status in the most visceral terms.
So Lefter was the national football icon, the celebrated captain of the national team adored by millions of fans of all backgrounds. But in September 1955, the coordinated anti-Greek Istanbul Pogrom broke out.
Fueled by political tensions surrounding Cyprus.
Right, and we need to grasp the depth of this event. The violence was widespread, it lasted 2 days. Coordinated mobs targeted Greek-owned businesses, homes, churches, institutions.
It was a calculated act of terror aimed at completing the process of cleansing Istanbul of its ancient Greek presence.
And this violence became intensely personal for Lefter.
Yes, a mob attacked his family home.
Despite his status as a national hero, despite the records he held, despite his service to the flag, his family was targeted purely because of their Greek background. It's an almost unimaginable conflict to hold simultaneously.
Hailed as the country's best representative on the pitch one day.
And targeted for your identity the next.
It is the ultimate test of character and loyalty. He saw the very best of the adoration the Turkish people could offer through sport, but he also witnessed the very worst of the prejudice and systemic violence aimed at his community. This forced thousands of Greeks to leave Istanbul forever. It fundamentally changed the city's demographic and cultural fabric.
And yet Lefter stayed.
He stayed.
And this external pressure, this immense societal danger, paradoxically, only solidified his commitment. I mean, he had played in Italy and France, he'd gained international experience, he had money, he had fame, he had every reason, and arguably every moral justification, to take his family and settle permanently in Europe or Greece, where he would be safe and universally celebrated.
But he chose Fenerbahçe. He returned after his brief European stint and played for another 11 years, until 1964. He turned down other chances to stay with the club he loved, despite the clear and present danger to his family.
When we analyze this decision in modern terms, where transfers happen every 6 months and players move for marginal increases in salary or perceived brand visibility, Lefter's decision carries a profoundly different weight.
It's a different universe.
He embodies the ultimate one-club man in spirit, but his commitment was an existential choice. His decision to stay wasn't just about football earnings or comfort. It was a profound political and social statement expressed through sport.
It was a declaration of belonging. By remaining visible and fiercely loyal, he signaled, through his immense, undeniable talent and his enduring presence, that he belonged here, with his team and his city. Despite the hostility and the systemic abuse, he became a living example that national identity did not have to equate to ethnic uniformity.
So his loyalty wasn't just passive acceptance, it was active defiance. And that decision gives his legacy a moral and historical weight that transcends every league title he ever won. It defined him as a figure of unity and resistance, committed to the idea of a shared identity, even when the nation around him was deeply fractured and trying to force him out.
And that is precisely why his fame, though local, is so much deeper than the transient global celebrity we see today. His legend is tied to the historical struggle for identity and belonging in a tumultuous 20th century. It makes him an enduring cultural touchstone, not just a sports star.
So following his retirement from playing in 1964, Lefter moved briefly into coaching. He had short stints in Greece, South Africa, and back in Turkey. But ultimately, it was his legendary status as the ordinaries on the pitch that remains his defining legacy, right? Not his time on the sidelines.
Oh, absolutely. And when he passed away in January 2012, the reaction was just overwhelming. The sources describe his death as a period of national mourning, and the funeral itself was this powerful unifying moment which speaks volumes about the legacy he built.
It was held at the Shukru Sarkolu Stadium.
His beloved home ground, of course.
But the truly remarkable detail here, the ultimate testament to the unity he fostered, is that fans from Fenerbahçe's fiercest rivals, Galatasaray and Beşiktaş, attended the funeral together.
Standing side by side to pay their respects.
You know, a figure has transcended the sport when they can compel rival fan bases known for their heated, sometimes violent divisions to stand together in shared respect and grief.
It proves he was truly a builder of unity, a man whose personal commitment outweighed all the tribalism of sport.
And his memory isn't just stored in dusty history books or fan memories. It is immortalized in permanent honors today. His name is quite literally featured in the official Fenerbahçe club anthem.
Sung every match day by thousands.
That integration into the foundational identity of the club is it's profound.
And the recognition goes far beyond just the club level. The entire Turkish National Football League officially named the 2018-2019 Super League season the Lefter Küçükhandanyadi season in his honor.
That is a significant move by the National Federation to formally acknowledge his immense and, complicated contribution to Turkish sport and society.
For sure. But perhaps the most powerful tribute of all, connecting back to the fans who created and sustained his legend, is the statue.
Right, the statue in Kadıköy.
A magnificent bronze statue of him stands proudly in Kadıköy, near his home stadium. And this monument wasn't mandated by the state or the club.
It was funded and built by the fans themselves.
The fans, that organic grassroots veneration, proves his status as the true, immortal king of the community.
Okay, so let's circle back now to the initial contradiction we posed at the start of this deep dive. Why isn't Lefter Küçükhananiades globally famous? He has the stats, he has the World Cup story, and he has this undeniable, powerful historical legacy.
If he was playing today, he would be a global superstar.
Oh, for sure. Commanding multi-million-dollar endorsement deals, appearing on magazine covers worldwide.
Exactly. But his story belongs to a different era. Before satellite television, before the Champions League era, before global media manufactured worldwide fame and turned footballers into these interchangeable global commodities.
Lefter's legend was earned on muddy pitches.
Through word of mouth, through the certainty of that chant, Ver Lefter, Yes Defter. His fame was deep, it was locally profound, and it was passed down through generations within his world. That's what makes him the immortal king he remains today. He was famous in the way that truly matters to a community.
So he didn't need the global brand machine. His brand was the fierce, unwavering, enduring loyalty of the people of Istanbul and Fenerbahçe, a loyalty that he mirrored and repaid tenfold.
And that's a type of fame that is often much more powerful and enduring than the fleeting nature of global celebrity. It's rooted in shared struggle, loyalty, and historical presence.
So, to summarize our journey through these sources, Lefter Küçükhananiades was a footballing genius, the Ordinaries, whose staggering success on the pitch is inseparable from the complex cultural and political landscape of mid-20th century Istanbul.
He achieved unparalleled local success while navigating immense identity challenges, ultimately choosing loyalty over personal safety and comfort.
We've defined the true parameters of a timeless legend here. It's one whose impact transcends sports statistics, one who can unify people even across deep political and religious divides through nothing but sheer loyalty and talent.
And Lefter demonstrated that being a national hero often requires facing down hardship with unwavering commitment.
We've explored the records that were set in an era without global media scrutiny, where fame was earned one goal and one community bond at a time. So here's a provocative thought for you to chew on as you go. What does the story of Lefter Küçükhananiades tell us about the fundamental difference between a globally famous, ephemeral celebrity, a fleeting name in a database, and a deeply ingrained, locally beloved, and timeless hero? Which type of legacy is ultimately more powerful, and how do we ensure those local, profound stories aren't lost in the noise of globalized sport?
Reflect on the nature of fame and how we choose to preserve the stories that truly matter, the stories rooted in commitment and identity. It is often the local, profound legends who leave the deepest, most permanent mark on history.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary life and enduring legacy of the King of Fenerbahçe.